Welcome into Daggerheart characters. My name's Steve. Today we're going to be looking at the Chronomancer class. Of course, not of course, but it comes with two subclasses. We'll just be looking at one character sheet because I'm kind of recording these all right now, and I don't know what happened to my other character sheet for the other subclass, but it's not usable. It appears it won't open, so we'll have to live with that. We'll also have to live with the fact that I don't have a write-up for it. It's a Chronomancer, a time wizard, and the reason for that is because this uses my time domain. That it's a homebrewed domain that I created. There's a link in the video in the description to the video where you can look at the time domain itself, the video that I made for it. There should also be a link going to the time domain write-up in case you're interested in getting access to all of the domain cards, checking them out. Maybe you don't want to check out the video. Either way, plenty of ways for you to find out more about the time domain. I'll go over the specific cards when I go over the character, the ones that I chose for the character, since those are, not as readily available or, well known as other cards, just to give you an idea of, what that character is. But first, we'll start out, we'll go through the character here. The class here, the subclasses, all the abilities, and then we'll look at one of the characters that I created using the Chronomancer. The domains here are going to be the Codex and the Time domain. Once again, it's a Time wizard. Starting evasion is 12. Starting hit points is 5. Class items are going to be a pocket watch or your favorite book. I don't know. And the hope features, the hope feature is now spend 2 hope to gain advantage on a roll, and you use a D8 instead of a D6 when you get this specific advantage from your hope feature. So, a nice way to get advantage. I think there's going to be a little bit of interplay with that, at least with one of these characters that I created. I should say one of the subclasses. I think we'll link into this a little bit too to take more advantage of that. The class features are TikTok is the first one. At the start of your session, place a number of time tokens on this card equal to your spellcast trait. You can use a time token to activate one of the following effects. Freeze is going to be the big one here. You can make a spellcast roll against a creature within far range. On a success, the creature becomes temporarily time-locked. A time-locked creature target is both vulnerable and restrained. So you get pretty big effect there. And then we have Haste, allow a target within far range to move anywhere within very far range without having to make an agility roll. And Slow, reduce the movement of a target within far range. The target can move no further than very close range the next 2 times they have the spotlight. So obviously for mobility purposes, team assisting your team-wise, Haste, that could be absolutely huge in some situations, or at least just helpful in others. And Slow, of course, could be big, helpful, whatever, in terms of controlling the battlefield more. And the other class feature that you get is Slip of the Tongue. Once per long rest, after you make a presence roll, you can decide to give yourself advantage on the roll. Roll an advantage die and add the result to your roll. The reason that you can do this after you make the presence roll is because we are a time wizard, and this is the idea of saying something, regretting it, not saying it well enough for purposes of course, succeeding on the roll. And so you give yourself advantage of that. I would imagine it as you kind of just roll back the clock a few seconds and then take a second attempt at whatever type of presence roll that you're making. So those are the class features. The hope feature for the Chronomancer. The subclasses are going to be the Graviturgist or the Paradox Archer. The Paradox Archer is the character we will see. So this is all we'll see of the Graviturgist here. You can play the Graviturgist to control the battlefield by controlling both time and space. So Graviturgist is going to help you expand on just the spells that you get with, of course, the Codex domain, expand on your time, your control of time, and give you a control of space as well. Spellcast trait is going to be knowledge, and your foundation feature is going to be force push. Make a knowledge reaction roll against a creature that comes within very close range of yourself. On a success, mark 2 stress to push them back to close range, ending their spotlight. That's why it costs 2 stress. You're also going to end their spotlight with this. So, and all they have to do is walk within very close range of yourself. Pretty big defensive feature, just kind of locking them in and actually pushing them away, and then and then stealing the spotlight from them. So a little bit of space, a little bit of time. And then our specialization feature is going to be orbital debris. I'm surprised I didn't say debris. So make a spellcast roll of 14. Once per long rest, on a success, you pull several large pieces of material from your vicinity and they surround and move with you. Place 4 tokens on this card and gain a +1 to your damage thresholds for each unspent token. So at the beginning you get +4 to your damage thresholds. You must spend a token when attacked from close or far range, from close, I guess close to far range or close or far, hurl a shard of material at the attacker and their attack is made at disadvantage. And notice it does say must, so it's just kind of an automatic defensive feature. Or you're dealt damage from an attack within very close or melee range. Use a shard to reduce damage by 1 threshold. So you see these are working at different ranges. When you're attacked from close or far, you give them disadvantage. When you're dealt damage from within melee or very close, the shard is going to react as... So, you can hurl it at the target, or the shard will react as a shield for you, an armor slot, essentially reducing the damage by 1 threshold in that instance. And remove all tokens from this card on your next rest, and once per long rest usage there. And then you get a mastery feature. So you see, I'm not stacking you with a lot of stuff. This was a fairly strong starting spot, 12 evasion here for this character, so I didn't want to overload this character with this, I should say, this subclass with too much going on. And then you get Gravity Well as well. Once per long rest again, make a spellcast roll on a target location within far range to open up a Gravity Well. All creatures within close range of the Gravity Well, or later enter within range of the Gravity Well, close range, must make an agility reaction roll against your spellcast roll. On a failure, they are immediately pulled to the target location and restrained. Creatures that failed must make a strength roll against your spellcast roll to remove the restrained condition and exit the Gravity Well's range. The GM may spend 2 fear to close the Gravity Well. You can close it, or it closes at the end of the scene. When the Gravity Well closes, creatures are no longer restrained. I just imagine using this on a cliffside and pulling a bunch of guys right over that cliff, holding them there, and then closing the Gravity Well and letting them drop. That could be fun, of course, if they don't have any way to fly or anything like that. So that is the Graviturgist. Just some nice, stronger-ish features here. A little bit of defense along the way. Actually, a lot of control and defense going on between these features, and then you combine that with TikTok as well on top of that. And that is going to bring us on to our Paradox Archer. You play the Paradox Archer to effectively attack from a distance with your magical arrows. Spellcast trait is going to be Finesse. And your foundation feature is Magic Arrow. Make a spellcast roll against a target within very far range. On a success, deal d8 plus 2 magic damage equal to your proficiency. At 5th level, deal d8 plus 5 damage, and at 8th level, deal d8 plus 8 damage. So this does scale up damage-wise as you go, which will be helpful. And from very far range, that's a pretty strong, dice number there. I believe the game would use a d6 typically for anything that hits from far or very far, really. Or at least most things that hit from far, and I think anything from very far. Then for your specialization features, I shouldn't say anything, any weapon. We have Heavy Arrow. When you use Magic Arrow, deal bonus damage to your damage roll equal to your tier. So a little bit more of a boost to that baseline of damage there, making your Magic Arrows quite strong. And then Blinding Arrow. When you use Magic Arrow on a hit, mark a stress to cause the target to become vulnerable against the next attack against them. Of course, the idea being, you temporarily blind them, and the next attack's gonna be much easier against them. They'll be a little bit defenseless against that. And then for your mastery features, you're gonna get a Seeking Arrow. When you use Magic Arrow, gain a +1 bonus to your attack roll, so just making sure it hits. And Arrow Out of Time. Talk about making sure it hits. When you use Magic Arrow, once per rest, when you miss, you can mark a hope to treat the attack as if it had hit instead. The target also marks a stress. So, there you go. You get some magical arrows that you can use, combined with, of course, the Codex domain and the time domain cards that you choose along the way, and, you know, these other features. And I think you can make something fun from that. So let's look at the Chronomancer Paradox Archer character that I created. Alright, so here is our Paradox Archer Chronomancer at 10th level. I do have a couple of the weapons that I would have chose along the way, but here's the final version. So when I create characters, I just choose one item at tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 to upgrade. You know, obviously it may work differently at your table or anything, but this just guarantees that I'm not going to way overtune them or anything to better represent hopefully what you're going to, you know, the end result here of a typical character that you might have. And this is going to be an Underborn Fairy. So Fairy, of course, you get Luck Bender, which will work nicely with our time domain here. So once per session, after you or a willing ally within close range makes an action roll, you can spend 3 hope to reroll the duality dice, and you get wings. So you can fly, make this character more mobile, and mark a stress to add 2 to our evasion while we are flying. So as you can see, we invested in the evasion of this character, so that's going to be very helpful for that purpose. And we are Underborn, which has low light living for the community feature. When you're in an area with low light or heavy shadow, you have advantage on rolls to hide, investigate, or perceive details within that area. So that's going to work nicely with our knowledge in terms of, well, with our finesse in terms of hiding, and then our knowledge in terms of investigating, perceiving details, that kind of thing, and a little bit of instinct, I guess, more so for perceiving details. That depends probably exactly what the GM rules there, but that's how we're gonna, you know, that's where you see our finesse is where we've invested the most. That's also our spellcast trait for the Paradox Archer. Knowledge second most. There are some domain cards for time, at least 1 or 2, that work on, that use knowledge too, so that doesn't hurt in case you were to want to take those. We're not going to be very strong, not super agile. We have wings, so, you know, in terms of maneuverability, that's going to help to make up for our agility. A little bit of presence there. We do get the option to, you know, re-roll some presence rolls and everything, so in big circumstances, we'll take that little bit of a bonus to our instinct as well there. And you can see we have invested fully in our efficiency here on, our proficiency, I should say, here on the screen. So our Paradox Archer is ready to deal some damage. Of course, we can hit from far, very far range, right, with our magic arrows, and we get some special abilities with those magic arrows that we just went over. And otherwise, though, we also are going to hit hard from closer. Anywhere from within close range, we can use our Talon Blades, which give us D10 plus 7 physical damage, which I think that equals out at the end of the day pretty closely with a higher ceiling to our magical arrow. And then when you roll a max value on your damage die, you roll an additional damage die, so the Talon Blades will definitely, on average, be doing more damage than our arrows, which makes enough sense, but also makes them worth having and not just using our magic arrows all the time. Our damage thresholds are 21 and 42, so nothing fantastic, not the worst in the world. We've got 6 armor slots to work with because we do have legendary armor, so this must be a tier 3 weapon that we're holding in our hands. And then we've got our legendary Gambison armor helping to increase that evasion, of course, and get us to, you know, some of these numbers that we've gotten to in terms of the evasion. We start at 12, that would bring us to 13. We invested in our evasion 3 times, and then we're going to be getting a +1 evasion elsewhere somewhere along the build, it would appear, as long as I did everything correct. You know, we can be close to the fight. We don't have to be. We don't have a whole lot of hit points just invested in that once, but we do have a lot of stress, or a fair amount of stress to work with. Reminder, here's our hope feature, our advantage die. When we use our hope feature, it turns into a D8, and we can gain advantage anytime that we want if we have 2 hope. Doesn't look like we invested in our experiences. Looks like we invested in these, you know, 1 extra time, essentially, or would that be 2? I think it would be, yeah, just 1 kind of extra time investing in our traits. To start out this character, we actually did start out close to the fight. Started out with a dagger and a small dagger, grabbed a spike shield, so up until 3rd tier we were actually using a dagger and a spike shield, probably mostly. Gave us a little extra armor slot and a little bit extra to our damage as well to help with that. I think we're going for Underborn. I think we have a little bit of a roguish aspect to this character, high evasion, Underborn character. It seems to be the path that I went here. We, of course, invested in becoming specialized and get our mastery as well in this subclass. And that brings us on to the domain card choices, and we're done with this character. So we'll start out here at 1st level. I chose Pause and Book of Typhar. Pause is going to be a once per long rest use card. When the GM chooses to make a move and they spend a fear in order to do so, you can spend 1 hope to prevent them from doing so, instantly returning the spotlight to yourself and your allies. The GM's fear is not spent, so they don't lose that fear. That's part of how I justified making that a 1st level card and it being a once per long rest. But yeah, it's a nice way to either pause the momentum that maybe your GM's got going against you guys, something's just going bad, a character's in a bad spot and about to get hit their final time. You can intervene, you can pause the fight, essentially, and give yourselves a chance to reset the battle a little bit. And then they also combine that with Book of Typhar. And the Book of Typhar, I assume part of the reason that I would have grabbed this would be the Wild Flame, which would give us a way to make a spellcast roll up against 3 targets that are within melee range. So anytime that we get surrounded, we're okay in a one-on-one type of situation in the early game here with our 5 hit points at that point, or maybe I invested in hit points immediately. So we're generally kind of okay to be in a little skirmish, but we definitely don't want to get surrounded too much, so Wild Flame will help us out in any kind of situation like that. Then I took Magic Hand and Mysterious Mist, which are both going to help us with that roguish aspect to this character, give us some other things that we can do, and a little bit of Mysterious Mist also being a little bit of a defensive feature there if you want to use it like that. Then we took Draining Strike, which is a time domain card at 2nd level. Draining Strike is going to let us, when we cause a target to mark their hit points, we can make a knowledge roll against them as well. And once per rest, on a success with that knowledge roll, the target must mark an equal number of stress to the number of hit points that they marked. So just going to give us a way, once again, too, this will work nicely since we are investing in our damage. Hopefully we get, some severe hits along the way, make that knowledge roll against them, try and make them mark some stress as well. So help us especially against the big bads who are using their stress to fuel their magical stuff. And then we also, at 3rd level, took Book of Norai, which I believe that's going to be the one that gives us, isn't that Fireball? Yes. So we'll get a Fireball, which we already have our magic arrows, but Fireball does have a higher ceiling of damage there, so I would just flavor that as an explosive arrow, ultimately, for the game. And then we also got Mystic Tether, which is going to give us a way to restrain a target, once again, more battlefield control, as well as bring a flying creature down, so our allies might be able to, we have wings, but maybe our allies don't, have great ways to get guys in the air. So that definitely helps some of our tankier frontline fighters if they're missing that aspect. And then at 4th level, it looks like I would have invested in an extra domain card. Actually, I don't think so, because 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No. So at 4th level, it looks like I took Supersonic Strikes. That's going to be a time domain card, going to help our damage that we do. So while this card is in your vault, on successful attacks, roll an additional damage die and discard the lowest result. That is an interesting thing that I did with these time domain cards. I have some of these cards where they actually give you a small benefit while they're in their vault, and then you can pull them out of your vault at the cost of the fact that you're not going to be able to move them out of your loadout once they're in your loadout until some sort of rest, a long rest or a regular rest, usually a regular rest. But at that point, once you pull them into your vault, out of your vault and into your loadout, you lose that passive bonus that you were getting while it was in your vault. You get some sort of specialty once use kind of feature, and then it just locks up a dead spot in your vault. So it limits your ability to, it limits your flexibility and holds up a spot there in your loadout. For supersonic strikes, once again, on successful attacks, you get to roll an extra damage die, discard the lowest result, and once per rest, after rolling for damage, place this card into your loadout, and the target of your attack becomes temporarily restrained, which I actually changed that. That used to be more bonus damage kind of deal, but I ended up changing it to be temporarily restrained. So another way that we are going to be able to more battlefield control. And I should mention, too, along with that, I definitely rolled damage with this character plenty. You combine the fact that we're going to be able to roll an extra damage die, discard the lowest result, but when you roll max value on a damage die, you roll an additional die. So we're, really able to increase our chances to get that additional damage die as well by being able to roll an additional attack roll. So that's nice. Then at 5th level, I took the Book of Grin, which is going to give us an arcane deflection, a magical deflection type of tool, a counter spell kind of ability. Time lock, which makes a lot of sense with who this character is, the ability to lock an object at a certain space and time. And then Wall of Flame, kind of building on this little bit of flame ability that we have, as well as more battlefield control, another way to help control the battlefield and deal out some damage, of course, in some instances as well. That's going to bring us on to our 6th level selection was Chrono Shift. We are a bit of an assassin type of character at the end of the day here, so taking Chrono Shift gives us a +1 to our attacks. That's another card that we get a bonus while it's in. That's a permanent bonus while it's in our vault. So when you choose this card, gain one of the following benefits while it is in your vault, either a +1 to your attack rolls or a +1 to your spellcast rolls. I chose my attack rolls. So once per long rest, after I fail an attack roll, I can place this card into my loadout and spend 3 hope to turn that attack into success. So I need to hit right now. I can spend 3 hope to make a hit happen, and you can only move this card out of your loadout during a rest. So you lose that bonus. Once I've done that, then I lose that +1 bonus to my attack rolls. And then at 7th level, I took Sigil of Retribution, giving us a way to deal more damage. Another burst damage potential against the big bad really here is probably the only character that will need this Sigil of Retribution. So when I know I'm going in for a big battle, we'll get this puppy out there and ready. That is a Codex domain card. We also took Book of Hamet here at 7th level. I just figured this character, it depends on your campaign and everything, how much Book of Hamet would really be beneficial, but I'm just pretending, at least in this campaign, that it'll be able to help to be able to create gateways and move between, I believe, not dimensions, but realms and such. So took Book of Hamet there, and then at that's 8th level, right? 9th level, I took Always Prepared. That is going to be a time domain card. Always Prepared. When a source gives you disadvantage, you don't get disadvantage. You can ignore disadvantage. And when you roll the maximum result on your advantage die, you can clear a stress or gain a hope. So that actually works kind of counterintuitively, right? With our increasing the damage die to a d8. But nonetheless, it is a little beneficial bonus that we can get in terms of regaining some stress, gaining some hope to help use some of our other features as well that we use hope for, or to get another future attempt with advantage. And then the last one is Time Dilation. That's also going to be a time domain card, obviously, right? And this is where we got our final bonus to our evasion to get up to +17. While this card is in your vault, you gain a +1 bonus to your evasion. So you can see we have several cards that are just going to be sitting in our vault a lot of the time until we activate their active feature. So that's Always Prepared, not Supersonic Strikes, but Chrono Shift, and I think maybe I think there was one more, right? Maybe Supersonic Strikes is one. Yeah, it is, because it gives us... So those 3 cards aren't even really counting towards our 5 that we're going to put on our loadout, at least to begin our days. So yeah, Time Dilation, the once per rest, it's a once per rest instead of once per long rest feature, and when a creature would deal damage to you, you can avoid the attack. So it's like a 3rd level card for the Blade domain, where you can just avoid an attack by moving this card from your vault into your loadout. When you do, you may reposition yourself to a spot within very close range, another little bonus on top of that. You can only move this card out of your loadout during a rest, so once you've done that, you lose that bonus to your evasion. So, you know, the intention of these cards is always that, you know, you use them in emergency situations, because then you do lose that little bonus that you were getting. And that is our Paradox Archer. I apologize that I don't have the ability to show you a Graviturgist. I think you could get an idea of where that might go. But yeah, I will also be showing you another class that I created soon called the Seer class. So I'll be recording that now, but check that video out when that comes out if you want to see more of what I've done with this time domain and how it works along with some of the other domains that already exist in the game. And thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.